Hi, this is Julie, and before we get started, I want to let you know that I've opened applications for a San Francisco Bay Area Mother's Quest Circle, a 4-session experience providing inspiration, coaching, and community to spark your epic life. If you find you're at the threshold of something big and want to get clear about your future vision and start taking steps toward it, with a supportive group of women cheering you on, the Mother's Quest Circle could be just what you're looking for. Visit mothersquest.com/circle to learn more and apply. Now onto the show. Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to 2 high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? In the months leading up to a big milestone birthday, I decided it was time to stop sidelining my dreams and realize that I'm the hero of my own journey. I knew I didn't want to do it alone, so I created this podcast to learn from other moms on their own quest, so their words of wisdom and lessons learned could help light the way for mine. I created this podcast for myself. Come along with me, and you'll find some treasures of your own. This conversation with best-selling New York Times author and TED Talk speaker Julie Lythcott-Haims was over 2 years in the making and yet came just at the right time. Author of How to Raise an Adult, Break Free of the Overparenting Trap and Prepare Your Kids for Success, and Real American, a memoir, Julie is interested in the human experience and writes nonfiction, creative nonfiction, and poetry with the aim of helping humans thrive. She has a JD from Harvard Law School, an MFA in writing from California College of the Arts, and holds her BA in American Studies from Stanford University, where she later returned to serve as Dean of Freshman and Undergraduate Advising, among other roles. She currently lives in Silicon Valley with her partner of 30 years, her 2 teenagers, and her mother. Born to an African-American father and a British mother, Julie moved often in her childhood, from Nigeria to New York to Wisconsin to Washington, D.C., where her father was part of the Carter administration, and then back to Wisconsin again. Along the way, she struggled to find her identity as a biracial woman who faced stereotypes and microaggressions about her Blackness that sent her on a journey from self-loathing to self-love, something she reflects on with powerful honesty in her memoir. Before I tell you more about our conversation, I want to introduce Tamara Chabot, who I first met when her husband Tunde coached my son Ryan in basketball at a program we came to love called Team Isfachi. With Tunde, Tammy has gone on to create an incredible organization called Street Code Academy and is currently running to be a school board member in the Ravenswood City School District. Here's Tammy with this episode's dedication to her own mother.
Hi, Julie. It's Tamara Chabot here. Thank you so much for having me here on this episode. I feel especially blessed today to dedicate this episode, which is featuring another amazing woman, Julie Lythcott-Haims, who I really admire. Not only did she do so much work at my alma mater at Stanford, but also her recent book, How to Raise an Adult. It just really speaks to my heart in so many ways. I really think what she said there aligns totally with what I'm doing and why I'm doing it in my work every day. Pretty much my entire adult life, I've worked here in the education and youth development space. I really just love and understand the impact that a great education can have on a person's life, how that impact carries over into the next generations of that person's life. And I'm so excited to be able to help support people along their journeys to becoming effective adults. I work at Street Code Academy, an organization that I founded alongside my husband and other community members. And there we teach courses in technology, design, and entrepreneurship to people from ages 4 to 84, really to help them become innovators. We offer all the classes for free because we believe that innovation is crucial to creating relevant solutions for local challenges. And we really want everyone to feel empowered with the skills, the mindset, and the network it takes to develop and own their power to be innovators and creators in this world. I've also recently been campaigning to be elected to the Ravenswood City School District. I know I'm either crazy or epic, right? No, it's a blessing to be on this journey with so many people, to offer service in this way, to be able to work alongside the people who are working tirelessly every day in our local schools to create opportunities for our children. And so I'm hoping through this campaign, folks will offer me up and hopefully vote for me to work with them in this way on the school board. So if you live in San Mateo and in Ravenswood, please vote for Tamara Chabot. I will do you proud. If you do not live here, it's all good. Just make sure you go out and vote for folks. Just use your power and voice and vote. So on to my mom. It's really special to be able to deliver this dedication to honor yet another lovely mother who just happens to be my mama, and give her the chance to live in digital eternity alongside the many amazing women you've featured here on this podcast. My beautiful mother, Paula Denise Lacey, she is what I would call the quiet storm. She is really the perfect example of a sweet and gracious lady who is mighty, strong-willed, sassy, and really, quite honestly, a superwoman. Really, my whole life she's been just so lovely to watch in action. I've always appreciated her opinions and the way she thinks about things and her just gracious presence and her beautiful soul. She's so wonderfully supportive and in such a sacrificial way, for the people that she loves and even the people that she doesn't know. And it's been a blessing to see that, because she's balanced it so well with going after her own dreams and goals and using her own passions and power and individuality. So being a sacrificial giver, yet, owning your own value, it's really something. And I think it's one of the best gifts she's given me, to be able to witness that so that I could learn to do that as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, as a community member who's working with so many folks. Thank you for showing me how to speak my mind, as well as how to be still and listen when it's time to hear others. Thank you for showing me how to sing with joy and thanksgiving in the glory of success, as well as in the midst of defeat. Thank you for showing me how to sew a wonderful hymn line. It has come in handy so many times, I can't even tell you. And thank you most of all for showing me how to really value and respect others, their gifts, their talents, their perspective, their experiences. You've really shown me that we are all connected in a very intimate way. And it's a very beautiful thing when we can work alongside each other in this wonderful journey we call life. I think that's the most beautiful gift you've given me, and it's invaluable. Thank you for loving me and teaching me how to love myself and really go after my own epic life. I love you so much. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Ciao.
Thank you, Tammy, for this beautiful dedication to your mother, highlighting the ways that she helped you to become a successful contributing adult who is both of service, but also steeped in your own self-love and self-worth. Those gifts your mother gave you thread through this incredibly enriching conversation with Julie. We discuss her own healing journey with her mother and how that impacts how she parents her children today. Julie shares the lessons that she learned about how to successfully raise adults from her years as the dean at Stanford and extensive research that informs her best-selling book and popular TED Talk on the subject. She reveals the way that she's daringly made career pivots that others thought were crazy, what's next on the horizon for her, and how she may even create her own radio show one day. And we talk candidly about her journey to self-love and self-care, about her commitment to her partner of 30 plus years, and to the impact on her body and sexuality of moving toward menopause. I was struck by Julie's continued evolution in her own self-awareness, her commitment to personal growth, and pursuing her own purposeful path. Parallels evident in the wisdom she holds for us about how to raise our children to be healthy adults. Finally, I'm inspired by her bold challenge to us to look at how stereotypes and biases about Black people show up in ourselves and to do the conscious work of taking them apart. This conversation is a powerful one that has already begun to shift my awareness. I look forward to hearing what these life lessons and revelations from Julie begins to shift in you. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. Julie, welcome to the Mother's Quest podcast. I went back to see when I first reached out to you, and this interview has been almost 2 years in the making. And
Oh my gosh.
I know it's amazing when I see how that happens. I feel like this is a better time for the two of us to be having this conversation than it would have been when I first reached out to you. And I've just been learning to trust that things happen in the right time. So grateful for this opportunity to be with you today.
Oh, Julie, thank you so much. I'm honored to be on your podcast. I have no idea why it took us so long, but I apologize if it was on my end. I'm grateful for the opportunity and really looking forward to our conversation.
I think that life needed to happen for both of us in that time.
Probably.
I first reached out to you because we were both on Dr. Elisa Song's Thriving Child Summit. And I heard you, I think that was the first time that I learned about you, was listening to your conversation with her. She interviewed me as well. And since that time, you wrote a new book, The Real American, and I started on a journey that I was telling you about of stepping into racism work and advocating for police accountability. You know, I think the conversation we're going to have today is very different than the one we would have had 2 years ago.
Yeah, perfect.
I like to start every conversation with a question about your childhood. Tell me a little bit about it, and also specifically the impact that your mother had in shaping who you are today.
It's like the hardest question first, Julie.
I know. We go deep fast.
Yeah, you do. So let me try to be thoughtful and succinct. I was born to an African-American father and a white British mother 50 years ago, and they were 20 years apart. My parents met in West Africa, married there, and moved to the States when I was 2. I moved around a lot. My father's work really drove that. So we moved from Nigeria to New York, to Wisconsin, to Washington, D.C., where my father was a member of the Carter administration, moved back to Wisconsin when Reagan beat Carter. That's where I spent my high school years. Then I came out here to California for college and fell in love with Northern California and pretty much never looked back except for 3 short years on the East Coast for law school. My mother and I have really been on a journey, as all mothers and children are or do, but ours has been one of intentionally rejoining each other as adult women. When my first child was born in 1999, my mother had been widowed for 4 years. My father passed away in 1995. And she said to me and my husband, when y'all get ready to have a family, I think I might want to move to California. She was living in Massachusetts at the time, to kind of help out and be around you, which we thought was great. And the long and short of it, for financial reasons, it made the most sense for her to combine her equity from selling her house with the equity we could net from selling our house here to buy one house in Palo Alto, which was known in the area as having the best public school. This is how I like to describe it. I lived with my mother for 17 years, 0 to 17. I lived without her for 17 years, from 17 to 34. And at age 34, I made the conscious decision to live under the same roof with my mother again for these reasons of getting our kids to the best public school. And we ended up building a house together, living under the same roof, back-to-back bedrooms. I used to joke we only had one child when we were drawing up the plan for this house. And I joked that we wouldn't have any more because I couldn't imagine having sex with my mother in the next room. And that goes back to issues of her discomfort with my sexuality when I was a teenager. And it was just never something we could easily, comfortably talk about. So I carried that with me into my 30s and into my 40s. And so it was a decision that was complicated and fraught and difficult and wonderful. And obviously there were tremendous upsides to joining our lives, and there were challenges as well. And it's interesting as I do the math, 17, 34, 51 will be the next sum, right? The next sum of 17 years will take me from 34 to 51. And I'm about to be 51 in November. So it'll be interesting to see what path we take approaching this next milestone. So, my mother is, like me, a type A person, very driven, highly educated, really full of ideas and opinions, great in conversation. I mean, I share these traits with her in a lot of ways. We both find it easy to be with people, easy to be in conversation. I think we both also struggle with needing to be right, needing to be believed, needing to win. We're both very competitive. And these themes are themes I contended with as a child in my mother's household and as a grown woman still in a household with my mother. So I'd say, try to sum this up, the memoir work that I did, coming to terms with my upbringing as a matter of race, being a Black and biracial kid in this country, really forced me to have some hard conversations with my mother about the choices she and my dad made. Of course, I'd like to be having the conversations with my dad too, but he passed away many years ago, as I've said. So it was really left to my mother to try to listen and defend or explain or just honor what it was that I was trying to say by way of the choices that they made around where and how they raised me with respect to race and community and belonging. So my mother and I love each other. We're very close. We've gotten closer since she moved out here. You know, all that was hard about us living under the same roof was stuff that we worked out. We worked it through. We'd have big arguments. My husband would sequester the children, and my mother and I would go at it. And we got to a point where we stopped arguing about the past and just started expressing our concerns about the present moment, whatever it was. So we've done a tremendous amount of work, a tremendous amount of healing. I think we understand each other better. My mother's not the sort of person to have even an hour of therapy in her life. I think she could benefit from that. Fortunately, I have. And so I come to the conversations among the two of us with a little bit more of a sense of how to work through difficulties, how to talk about what's really bothering you, how to express your own truth or feelings without trying to impose that on others. And, I have both been a participant in the healing along with her, but also a little bit more of a guide because I have more language from the world of therapy to tap into guide us in healing. So I'm glad we've done that work. I'm grateful that she's here with me. She's almost 80 years old. And I am glad that she's now in an attached cottage. So different entrance, totally self-contained cottage. So we don't see each other every day like we did when we all lived under the same roof, but we see each other a couple times a week and feels like a good rhythm and vibe for me. And that's where we are.
What a journey you have been on together. A couple things are coming to me as I'm listening to you. One, I finished reading your book last night and you share so many intimate and really poignant stories about your mother and her life and your life growing up and the ways in which she really wanted you to connect to your being Black. And then some of the choices that you're alluding to that I know a little bit more about because I read the book of, her not creating the environment for you to really connect to culture. I have just so much reverence for the depth of the relationship that you have with her and for how far you have traveled together. The other thing that struck me is that in Mother's Quest, I talk a lot about the reciprocal relationship between our children and us and how we are both teaching and guiding our children, but we're also always learning from our children. And what struck me in a powerful way, hearing you talk, is how that doesn't end. Even in this third chapter that you're in with your mother, there are ways in which you're still helping her to learn and grow in ways that she hasn't before.
I'd add to that, Julie, that I am the mother of a daughter and a son, but in particular, with respect to my daughter, I have framed the conflicts that I might feel both as mother in the big house that I live in and as daughter in the cottage right through that wall. I have framed that wall as this incredible dividing line. My mother's side of the wall, I'm the daughter, and as I'm behaving as the daughter and experiencing my mother as the mother, I feel it's a laboratory for me to practice how I want to be when I'm on this side of the wall as a mother with my own daughter. In other words, there are ways in which I feel interacting with my mother where even though I'm 50, I still feel like a child, which I know has a lot to do with me allowing myself to feel like a child going there, but also my mother's dynamic with me. So I notice the discomfort. I notice feelings of frustration or anger that might arise in me. I try to be very mindful about that and not act on that and really allow myself to say, okay, Julie, so when you go back over to your house and you have the opportunity to be the mother, how are you going to behave with your daughter, Avery, so that she doesn't end up feeling the way you're feeling right now? I almost have this like past and present and future are combusting in my home environment in a good way, combusting in the sense of there's a dynamism. There are things that are happening that we can observe and learn from. And I do think that doing this work with my own mother and on myself has allowed me to show up in a more healthy and mature way with respect to my own daughter and our mother-daughter relationship.
Well, I have so much curiosity about what that has shifted. We're going to get to that in a few minutes when I ask you about the first epic guidepost. But before we go there, I want to tell you a little bit about how I came to Mother's Quest tagline and guiding principle being to live our epic life, and hear a little bit about how that does or doesn't resonate for you. I had been doing a lot of reading and listening to the work of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And as a mother myself, I had a really transformative mother experience and a challenging one. My oldest, who's 14, who I was telling you about earlier, he had some significant developmental delays and issues that we realized before he was 2. The first really 3 to 4 years of his life were focused on all kinds of early intervention, and it was very consuming. And then as he started to do better and we began thinking about having a second child, I had about 5 to 6 years of infertility. So there was really a decade of my life where I felt like motherhood had become my primary focus. And there were many ways in which I was still doing meaningful work, but a lot of my dreams and a focus on my own growth had been sidelined. So this idea of the hero's journey, and I think where I was in my own life with my children, what I call a midlife renaissance, my 45th birthday was coming up. So this was about 2 years ago, really led me to step into living my life in what I now call living my epic life, where when I'm maybe a grandparent with my own grandchildren and I'm looking back on the life I lived, I feel like it was filled with all the things that mattered most to me. I feel like I stepped into the fullest expression of who I am, that I really made an impact in the way that I uniquely am here to make. So in addition to it signifying this idea of the hero or heroine's journey, it also is an acronym mnemonic for the guideposts that I think help us live that life when we're raising our children. So I'm going to ask you about those guideposts. But first, I would just love to hear whether you identify with being on a heroine's journey and what you feel like you're most on a quest for, if so.
I struggle with the word hero or heroine only because it feels so narcissistic. I'm not saying you're this way, but I don't want to be like, I'm on a heroine's journey, because I don't think of myself as any more heroic or heroine-like or hero-like than any other person on the planet. But if we can accept that term applies to all of us, that we are all here for that journey, then I can become okay with the term. I certainly feel, look, I was a corporate lawyer who pivoted 90 degrees and became a university administrator, who pivoted 90 more degrees and became a writer. And each time I was laughed at, the first time I was literally laughed at, leaving corporate law, some older corporate lawyers laughed in my face when I told them what I really wanted to do next. When I left the university to go get an MFA in writing, people were just like, what are you doing? Are you sure? Are you okay? But this is what I said back. I said, I am here to live this one precious life for as long as I've got. And I hope to always be learning and growing. I'm not here to make it and coast. I'm not here to make a certain amount of money and ease off the gas pedal. I'm not here to achieve a certain title or position in life and then wash my hands and say, I'm done. I'm going to go, live on an island and just contemplate the sky. I'm interested in growing and learning. And I want the challenges that hard work or that hard decisions bring. I want to live on that edge of terrifying and exhilarating. Someone asked me, how do you leave to do the next thing? How do you hold on to the sacred and still jump to the next thing? And I say, you can't hold on to the sacred. Whatever you're doing that you love, if you know something else awaits you, you have to let go of the current thing. You can't make this a leap to the next thing with all the energy that's required to make a successful leap if you're still holding on to the prior thing. And it is terrifying, but I think that this is when we know we're alive. We are doing the thing that scares us because we have some inkling that it might turn out to be useful, rewarding, pleasurable, joyful, instructive, whatever. I'm interested in my own growth. And I hope, that to me is what living is. Living is an active thing. I am living. I am growing like a plant. And I hope that is true until I take my last breath.
Everything you say is resonating for me. And I know for a lot of the people who are listening, well, too, my natural curiosity now is, where's your edge now in your life? Where do you feel yourself pushing and growing now?
A couple of places. One, as a parent, my children are now 19 and 17. I have a son in college, a daughter who's a senior in high school, and watching them emerge into adulthood, knowing everything that I know, having written How to Raise an Adult, trying to apply those wisdoms to my life with these older teens. knowing it's time for me to step back some, but to pay attention to, where's their learning edge. If I've done too much for them, I now have to, which I have in many cases, particularly with my older one, I have to hand the reins to him, and still be there to watch, not abandon him, but hand the reins to him so that, he can have confidence that I have confidence in him and that I expect can handle these things. Of course, that's easy to say and it's easy to write about, but it's hard to practice. So I am fully in that practice right now and rooting for him and for me to be able to really separate in this sense and for him to kind of emerge into that adult self. And of course, the separation doesn't entail loving him any less. My love for him is, of course, as fierce as it was on the day he was born. But we are in transition. He's fledging the nest and it is challenging. And I miss him. I miss my 2-year-old. I miss my 5-year-old. I miss my 10-year-old. I miss my 17-year-old son. But I'm loving watching my 19-year-old son become a man and an adult. And I'm delighting in every victory he has. And I'm rooting for him through every challenge he faces. So that's definitely one of the edges for me right now. The other is, I've just been saying this out loud to people in the last couple of months, so I know that it's true for me. I think I have 3 more books in me, maybe 4. But then after that, I don't know. I mean, these are the topics that I'm dying to write about. They're knocking on the door of my consciousness, like, write about me. And it may be that after those projects happen, should they happen, that there are more subjects to cover. But it's quite possible that I'll decide after a total of 5 or 6 books, hey, I think I'm done writing. Or at least for a time, what do I want to do now? And I don't know what that will be, but I think the point is I will always be interested in that possibility. I'm not going, oh, good, writing is going super well and I'm just going to stick with it forever. I'm grateful that people are resonating with my written work and that they come to see me give talks and that I can be in conversation with people about topics that matter. I'm just excited that there may be other ways in which I can be in community with people. I think I'd like a radio show, Julie. I love talking with people one-on-one about their lives. And I'd love to have a show where I listen and ask them good questions that open them up to the truth in their own selves, like you're doing with me right now. That's the work that I did as a college dean. And I've done it with people of all ages, frankly, across my lifetime. And maybe there's that kind of thing that awaits. Who knows? But I'll always be interested in what's next.
Well, I would be honored to support you and share what I've learned as you move into the radio show podcasting world, if you decide that's right for you. Of course, I'm wondering, what are those other 3 books? Are they topics you're able to share yet?
Absolutely. I mean, for what it's worth, don't hold me to this, anybody listening. But as I think of them right now, first of all, I'm under contract to write a sequel to How to Raise an Adult, tentatively called How to Be an Adult, which is aimed at 18 to 35-year-olds, that generation, currently the millennials, but people we speak of as being in their young adulthood. When you and I were 25, nobody told us we were young adults. We were just adults. But nowadays, we're really carving out a separate space called young adulthood. And it's an offering to people in that generation about how to inhabit an adult life, how to work as an adult, how to be in a relationship as an adult, how to look after yourself as an adult, how to manage your finances as an adult, how to be a good citizen, how to develop the right character. It's really, I hope I'm going to feel to them like an offering, like a companionship, like, hey, I believe in you. You're on this journey. We all are on it. And it's complicated these days, somehow uniquely so. And I care about that. And I care about you. That's the book that's coming next, I think, in 2020. After that, I hope to release a poetry collection. I began to think of myself as a writer really through poetry, through reading poetry and writing my own. And I have a collection, or I could pull together a collection that I think I'd like to get out into the world. And I think my challenge there is how to be taken seriously in any way, shape, or form in the genre of poetry when I've written a couple of straight up nonfiction books. I need to do the work to kind of inhabit that space and that community and kind of come back to my poetry roots and try to offer some poetry to the world. And then I'm interested in a personal essay collection on topics that we have a hard time talking about as humans. There are all the things, we're not supposed to talk about because we're ashamed or we feel too vulnerable or not allowed to feel that way or what have you. And with an offering here to Brene Brown, I really have personally learned how much we can grow and join in community with others when we can dare to let our guard down, pull the facade down, pull the mask off, and just show, express, discuss, perform, whatever it is that is our medium, our actual vulnerabilities. So this personal essay collection will be an effort to go there on a number of subjects. I have no idea what the subjects will be, but as listeners are listening, just think about the things you wish you could talk about, but you don't/can't. I want to be the author that says, yes, you can. Watch me do it. And maybe you'll feel the courage to do it too.
So powerful.
And then the final one, Julie, a mother-daughter book. I might have to pull this one up higher in the line because my mother is 80. The mother-daughter book where we get to write about our experience to become friends, to become equals, to become, whatever we are now. And I would envision it as she writes a chapter, I write a chapter. She writes a chapter, I write a chapter. We're not trying to agree with each other or reconcile facts or opinions or what have you. Just she tells her truth, I tell mine, and vice versa, all the way through the book, which I think would be something many mothers and daughters can relate to.
Oh, that's amazing. I have so many thoughts, which I'll follow up with you afterwards, seeds to plant for you as you're telling me these ideas, things that are striking me. One I'll mention for the sake of anybody listening, and I'll link to the show notes. Somebody who I think you should know if you don't already is Janelle Hanchett of the blog Renegade Mothering. And she just wrote a memoir called I'm Just Happy to Be Here. And she has that same fierce commitment to truth telling. And her
nice.
Powerful in that way. So I'll make sure to connect.
Oh, thank you.
Her. I want to dive into the epic guideposts.
Yeah.
We already started to talk a little bit about the first one. So E stands for engaged. And this is about being mindfully engaged with our children. Say a little bit more about how you've shown up differently in your relationship with Avery as a result of what you've learned in your own relationship with your mom.
Yeah. So here's an example. Avery one day, she's 17 now. So I think when she was 15 or 16, probably 16, she said, hey, Mom, can I go over to so-and-so's house? And I said, sure, who's going to be there? And she said, oh, no one you know. And she just said it in a way that I didn't believe her. She'd never responded that way before. Like, how is it that she's going over to a place where I would know nobody? And so I looked at her, with that raised eyebrow, and she said, all right, it's just that this boy, Chad, is going to be there. And, I know you're going to go, oh, Chad, Mom, because that's what you always do when I talk about him. And I thought, all right, I appreciate that. And I smiled. And I said, all right, yes, you can go. Have a good time. The next day, once the heat of that moment had passed, we were together in the dining room. I just said, you know what, Avery, mothers and daughters have a dynamic. It's far bigger than you and me. And mothers and daughters have the dynamic. Mothers want to know their daughters are safe. Daughters want to prove they're competent and capable. So every time the daughter wants to do something, she's trying to demonstrate, I can. And we as mothers want to make sure you're safe. So we want to kind of ask you all the questions that suggest maybe you can't, And I said, but here's the deal. My job is to keep you safe until you know how to keep yourself safe. And so that's all I'm about. That's all I'm trying to do. And the more you demonstrate good judgment, the more experiences you have in life, the more I can trust that you've got it. You can keep yourself safe. But in the interim here, I need information. You have to share information with me. I don't want you to lie to me, and you don't want me to pry too much. And so we have to reach some equilibrium where you give me enough information that I don't need to pry further, but I'm not asking for too much information, which makes you feel like you have to lie. And she got it. She was like, okay, that makes sense. I like that. And there was an ease to that conversation. There was no anger. There was no defensiveness on either of our parts. It was just this frank conversation between a 16-year-old and her 49-year-old mother that just cleared the air and allowed us to establish a little bit of a rule or a protocol, if you will, that really worked for us both. And my mother and I could never have conversations like that. In some ways, I'm trying to take everything I've learned from my own dynamic with my mother and figure out, okay, how can I deploy that now so that my own daughter and I have a better chance of getting to understanding more quickly?
One of the things that I'm noticing about that is you're really treating her as a human being, as a young person on her way to adulthood in the way that you treated that conversation. And so, of course, I'm thinking about your book and the TED Talk. You really emphasize the importance of giving our children the space and really seeing them as on this path to adulthood. What would you say is your highest level, biggest takeaway and piece of advice from all that incredible research and work you did on the subject that we can emulate from you?
I'm hesitating because I don't know that I can boil it down to one. There are two things that are screaming for me to articulate them right now.
The two.
Yeah. In our present moment, in communities like yours and mine, and maybe many listeners will resonate, our egos are so tied up in our child's lives. we as mothers and fathers have come to feel that our worth as a human, as a parent, is somehow a function of how well our kids are doing today. And so we are so invested in their having the outcomes we want, in part because we need those outcomes so we can feel better about ourselves. And that is damaging our kids. It's absolutely damaging their mental health and wellness when we behave as if everything they do is of consequence to us. We couch it as, I just want what's best for you. I want the best future for you. But if we're truthful, our own ego is saying, I need that bumper sticker for the back of my car that has the name of the right college on it, because people will feel better about me when I can say my child is there. And that's one example. There are myriad examples. And so we need to do the work on ourselves to get our egos out of our child's existence. That is what allows us to show up in dialogue with our kids, not trying to control them, control their choices, control their outcomes, but rather simply as guides and advisors who love them and want to see them make their own way. But we can have such a healthy, non-emotionally fraught, non-angry conversation when we recognize I am a separate person from this child. My child is making their own way. I am here to guide. I am here to love. But I'm not here to do or choose or make it happen. It's incredible how much relief has washed over me when I am able to really remind myself and actually internalize this knowledge that, hey, that's his decision to make, or that's his opportunity to go for, or that's the outcome, she's going to engineer for herself rather than I have to make those things happen. So that's probably what it boils down to. In other words, we are not our kids. They're not a mini-me. They're not our bonsai tree. They're not our trophy. They're not our pet. They're a separate person. And to respect that and then to feel humbled. I am the adult the universe chose to place this child with, to guide and feed and love. But this child is becoming their own person. They are their own person. All we've got to do is keep them safe until they can get out on their own. I mean, safe and fed and loved, I guess that's the highest level, biggest takeaway from me.
I'm noticing myself getting a bit emotional listening to it because, that conversation that I had with Elisa Song was about our journey as she was caring for our oldest, and that path that felt really harrowing at first about, what his future would be. And what I said to her was my biggest struggle at the time, but I have to keep learning it. It's still true now, is to realize exactly what you said, that his life is not mine. His developmental challenges were not my challenges. And that my role was not to get consumed by the fear of what if my child didn't meet the expectations I had for him when he was born. But really, and this came from my husband's loving guidance, our job was really just to help him become the best version of himself that he could be, to help him realize his potential. And we are still doing that. And I still come up against that same challenge. And actually, the other day, my husband and my oldest and I watched your TED Talk. And we asked him, how are we doing on this, Ryan? What do you think? And we all sort of agreed that we're doing a pretty good job, but, continuing to be mindful and aware of where we're getting hooked in to what we want for him versus supporting him to pursue his own passions and help him as he makes his own way.
And you know what, Julie? As I write in my book, and I actually did an article for Parents Magazine on this, parents raising kids with significant special needs come to this truth sooner than parents raising kids who are developing typically, right? We learn to face that sooner. I might have had in mind that this kid was going to be X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to help him get there or her. And then all of a sudden the disability humbles you. And yet, then you say, okay, well, what are they capable of? And how can I be sure that this child, as you said, is living up to his or her potential, whatever it might be? It's a wonderful lesson to learn early, Then we can be advocating for our kid to be the best they can be instead of who we wish they would have been.
Yeah.
Which frankly is at the root of a lot of parenting difficulties these days. We're thrilled when our kid is getting a 4.0. We're thrilled when our kid is studying pre-med. We're thrilled when our kid is checking all the boxes that we want them to check, instead of being thrilled for our kid because they're human beings who are loving and kind and know how to work hard and can get themselves through a day,
Well, it's interesting. I asked Ryan if he had a particular question that he wanted me to ask you. He's interesting in that he's what we consider twice exceptional, that, he has learning differences and challenges and developmental challenges. And then he's also highly gifted, which presents its own unique mix. He wanted to know if you, in your research, have found anything to be different for kids like him.
I haven't done the work into that. I have been to a couple of schools to talk to communities, parents, and teachers who are working with twice exceptional kids. And so I have been joined conversation with such communities 2 or 3 times, but I think we're so newly discovering / aware of / embracing the concept of twice exceptional, the kid with challenges and a high giftedness as well. We're only just starting to notice and figure out how they are in the world as adults and as much older adults. There have been plenty of people over the years who fall into this category, but I think recently begun really describing this community in ways that are frankly positive, and as opposed to like, this kid's got a problem, we're in a new era. And the answer to Ryan is, I'm sorry, I don't know based on anybody's work that I've read or talks that I've seen, but I do believe that there are so many people nowadays whose minds are highly gifted and who bring a set of challenges or whose minds are constructed in ways we haven't previously well understood. And I think our moment includes, of this decade, this century perhaps, is one where we're really going to discover the true giftedness of the various learning styles we think of as learning disabilities or learning challenges right now. I think there's a real shift underway in terms of how the human brain is constructing itself and what we understand about it. I guess I just bring a curiosity, like he does, to this question, and an optimism that we will be better and better at understanding and teaching and encouraging and supporting and learning from and accepting and embracing people who are twice exceptional.
Thank you. Maybe this might plant a seed for you as you're writing your new book on how to be an adult to include some of that perspective.
Actually already working on the outline for that book, and there are numerous places where in the outline form I'm indicating this section of the book is an opportunity to talk about, for example, people who are twice exceptional, or this is an opportunity in the book to talk about people who are LGBTQ, or this is an opportunity in the book to highlight how working class people are really quite more adept at this particular challenge than affluent people are. I'm hoping that in this next book I'm really quite inclusive of humans who frankly have previously been overlooked in a lot of narratives, to say, no, my book is going to be a book that draws upon the experience of quote unquote everybody. It won't literally be everybody, but I'm making that effort quite deliberately. And absolutely the experience of folks who are twice exceptional is something that I'll want to draw upon. So I will be doing more of the work, the reading of other people's research that Ryan's been asking about. And I hope that whatever I come up with proves to be both a celebration of who they are and is illustrative for other people.
Wonderful. We'll be anticipating that work. Maybe we'll even have the opportunity to be in conversation with you about that
Cool.
when it comes out.
Thank you.
We're going to move to the next guidepost, P, which stands for passionate and purposeful. And this is about the impact that you make beyond your family. We've already talked quite a bit about your past and even what's on the horizon for you. What I would love to hear is, what do you feel like is the common theme that stretches across all of the things you've done or will continue to do about your purpose and impact?
I can't imagine trying to lead a life that isn't passionate and purposeful. I have been passionate about every step that I have taken. As I've grown more self-aware, developed a mindfulness practice, it has allowed me to be more purposeful in my conversation, in my decision-making, in my behaviors and interactions. So to me, passionate and purposeful are sort of like vitamins and water, or exercise and sleep. It's like, these are the fuel. These are the things that oil the engine. And I do believe, some people would say, well, these are very first world concepts. Not everyone can be passionate about things they have going on or purposeful. Many people are just trying to eke out a living here. Even in this very first world United States, there are people who may find the concept inaccessible. And I would just say, not using passionate and purposeful to exclude anybody. I think we all can tap into, what do I feel, I'm good at? What do I feel I want to do tomorrow or the next day or the next week or the next year? Setting goals and caring about the goals we set and feeling really proud of ourselves when we achieve them. That's what passionate and purposeful is.
When you think about the different ways in which, I really appreciated you talking about all of these pivots in your life in terms of, the expression of your passion and purpose. I'm just curious, do you feel like there's some common thread that runs between all of them?
Yeah, I'm interested in helping humans. Doesn't sound terribly unique, and it's not. Many people have that passion, and some people will express it by becoming a nurse or an EMT or a doctor, and others will express it by becoming a teacher or social worker or defense lawyer or a prosecutor. We can manifest that interest, that desire to help our fellow humans in a number of different ways, jobs, careers, and professions. So more narrowly, my interest has been how can I be in conversation with humans who are struggling in some way? How can I take an interest in their struggle? And how can I, through empathic, compassionate dialogue with them, help them find the courage and strength within their own self to move forward? And I think, my two books seem very different. How to Raise Adults is about the harm of helicopter parenting. Real American is about dealing with racism. But at the root of both is an obstacle that I'm trying to move out of someone's path. Helicopter parenting harms kids. It is an obstacle in their path. Racism harms us. It is an obstacle in our path. And as a writer, I'm trying with my writing to help people confronting those obstacles to move the obstacle out of their path.
That is really powerful. And as I'm listening to you and after reading your books, I think something I identify in you that I see in myself is this willingness to do the work first of our own personal exploration and learning and journey, and to use that as part of the vehicle for helping others.
For sure. And I didn't appreciate that at all when I was in my 20s or 30s. I came to an appreciation that there was work I had to do really in my 40s. And I wish it hadn't taken me so long. On the other hand, I think that's typical for a lot of people. We get out of our own way. We deal with our own insecurities. We understand how our insecurities are fueling our behaviors. That might make it more of a challenge to work with other people. We work through that. We become more self-loving, easier to work with. And then we can finally be in this sort of liberated, free space where we can, having done a lot of work on ourselves and continuing, of course, to always do that work, we're much better able to be of use to other humans.
Well, that brings us in a really seamless way to the next guidepost, I, which stands for invested in ourselves. What do you feel like has been the key to you doing that work for yourself?
Well, I had a great executive coach at Stanford. This would have been 2008, 9, 10, 11. Can't remember when she left, but she was brought in to work with our team. We weren't getting along very well. To be totally frank and blunt, I thought initially my job was just to really help her understand what was wrong with everybody else. I was so not self-aware. I had no humility, and I just thought I was doing a great job. And in a lot of ways, I was doing a very good job. But, let me just help this lady understand. If she could just help this person fix this problem, that person fix that problem, and this person fix the third problem, then our team dynamic would be just fine. And of course, I learned through my conversations and work with her that I too had stuff to work on. And I trusted her enough to really do the work. And for me, what I was able to discern about myself was that when I was showing up in ways that were counterproductive in the workspace because I was too passionate, too emotional, too angry, which, by the way, are all stereotypes of Black women. So when they gave me this feedback, I was further incensed. But my coach was really gentle with me, and she's a white Buddhist woman. And she said, when I said, thanks for the stereotype, I told her my emotion was warranted. And she asked me if it was working for me. And I was like, no, actually it's not. Because often when I get emotional, passionate, and angry about something, the consensus in the room is that I can see in everyone's faces is that I have overstepped and now I have to apologize or try to explain further. And the whole underlying point that I was upset with in the first place or passionate about has been lost. And now it's all about me and my behavior. So with work, I learned that the triggers for my passion, anger, and emotion were about feeling, not good enough or judged on the basis of my race. This is a pretty universal concern. Many of us have this sense of insecurity, like, do they like me? Do they respect me? Am I being overlooked? Am I being listened to? Am I being taken seriously? Many of us experience this for all different reasons. I'm just saying for me, my reason had to do with race, which I discovered as I began unpacking, my past and my memory with my coach. So I became invested in healing that, in loving myself, regardless of what people might be attributing to me on the basis of my race. And a magical transformation happened. I really write about this extensively in Real American. So that was huge. And I became this self-loving Black woman, which meant, I no longer needed to be invested in every moment and trying to make sure nobody was, discriminating against me or dissing me or overlooking me on the basis of my race. I could stop worrying about that. The other thing is, if you had asked me 5 years ago what I did for self-care, I would have laughed and said, I don't know, I really love my work. And then the person would have said, no, but self-care, bubble baths or massages. And I would have said, I hate bubble baths and massages. In other words, I didn't feel any connection to the concept. And every example people gave me about self-care didn't resonate. And I thought, I don't even what? Whereas now I can tell you what I do for self-care. I can look at this journal that I write in, that I restart every 3 months, and self-care is right here at the top. And it says what I intend to do by way of taking care of myself, from the exercise class I go to, weaning myself off caffeine, to getting enough sleep, to drinking enough water, to, eating the way that I want to, that's healthy for my body. And prioritize those things. First time in my life that I'm really prioritizing those things. And, and I'm 50 now. But I really finally believe that you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can help others.
I tell you, the 40s, there's something special about it.
Absolutely.
Getting better as you move into your 50s.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate what you've just named about self-care. And I agree so much that we tend to define it in this very narrow and superficial way. And actually, there's so much depth and power to thinking about, like, what do we really need to thrive and to care for ourselves? And then the power of what that can be in our own modeling for our children about how we want them to care for themselves. So maybe they don't have to wait till their 40s to learn that lesson.
Yeah. And, because I am on a podcast with you and this is so public, I didn't say one of the obvious things, which is on my self-care chart, which is my relationship with my husband and being intimate with him. But I'm saying it to you now because how could I not share it? Anybody listening needs to know, right, that matters too. And, to be healthy, living, vibrant humans, if we're fortunate to be in relationship with somebody, tending that relationship is really important. Really important. And it's just, I'm sort of making a plug for the fact that some of these things we have trouble talking about, as I alluded to in talking about one of these books I might write someday, are things we have to talk about and share. My husband and I have been together for 31 years and married for 25 and 2 children and, lives that have changed dramatically and gone in different directions. And we've done the work and continue to do the work to stay really, really closely connected to one another. To the point where I can say to you, he's the most important person to me in my life. I adore my children. I absolutely do, of course. And my partner, he's my person. He's the person I hope I'm alongside when I take my last breath. And we do the work to try to make sure we are continually connecting with each other in conversation, in intimacy. That's such a euphemism, to make sure we're having sex. And that changes as you age, right? I'm 50 and menopause and all of that. And things are different when we were 20.
Right there with you.
This matters.
I really appreciate you naming this. And this is something that I've been married for over 20 years. And I'm going to say it because you inspired me. I'm already in menopause, even though I'm younger than you. And definitely experiencing some of those same challenges. I'd love to hear a little bit more about this in the next guidepost, which is C, stands for connected to a strong support network. So we realize that we're not alone on our journey. And I think that for those of us who have partners, remembering to invest in that relationship, especially when we're still raising our kids, is challenging. If you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear, as you've been doing this work with your husband, are there a few lessons or particular things that would be helpful for us to know?
Yes, there are. So glad you're asking me this. All right. And so the readers were like, oh no, I don't want to hear about this. It's okay. You do, or you might. Okay. The first bit of advice I'm going to give is advice my husband's grandmother gave me when we got married. She said, your children will grow up and leave you, but if you want, your marriage to be intact, you have to go away twice a year without the children. And I thought she was just a crazy old, lady when she said this, because I didn't have children. And I just thought, how could I ever leave my children for a weekend when they're young? And of course, I couldn't appreciate it until I had them. So we followed her advice and we go away every 6 months, just us. We're fortunate. We have family. My mother's in our life. So she was happy to take the kids for the weekend. And we go away around our anniversary and then we go away 6 months later. And that's been our pattern for 20 years. We have not missed a single episode. And the 2 nights are important because particularly with young children, you want to go away somewhere, check into a hotel or motel or campground or whatever it is, go. You want to wake up and have nothing to do that day but focus on each other and a relationship. And so, wake up that day, that first morning, no one needs a nap, no one needs a feeding, no one needs a diaper, nobody, it's all about you two. And you could sleep all day, you could have sex all day, you could read books all day, you could drink wine all day, you could do all those things, right? And then you have the second night and then you check out the following day. So the 2 nights are critical because it's really the day in between that is the magic, okay? And if you don't have family in town, I would say have some friends that you can swap with. You take their kids for a weekend and they take yours. The other thing is we are very intentional about leaving notes for each other. We read about this in a book called How Do Happy Couples Stay Together or something. And we got this advice there. And basically my husband printed out the statement, I love you because colon with a line underneath it. It's about 5x7 horizontal. I love you because, and there's a lot of room above the line to write something in. Then he framed it behind glass in a wooden frame, and he gave it to me with a dry erase marker, and that sits in our bathroom. He can fill the blank, and he puts it on my side of the bathroom. And I'll look at that and smile and thank him. I might reply right away with something I love about him, or it might take me 3 days, or it might take me a week. Sometimes we've gone as long as 2 weeks, but never longer than that. So we're constantly trading these little bits of gratitude and tiny things. Like if we had a really difficult argument, I remember once writing, I love you because you came home last night. Like people might think like, what? Yes, you have to acknowledge that, or I love the way you did X, Y, and Z in bed just now. Like you have to acknowledge that too. Or I love you because of how you treated my mother the other day, or, this morning, or I love you because you're an amazing artist. I love you because you're so kind, even when you'd rather just shut the door. You're so kind to strangers, whatever it is. So we've been trading that framed gratitude thing back and forth for years. And I think it makes a big difference. In addition to our partners, there's our chosen family. Whether we actually love our actual family, whether we feel accepted, is an open question. But our chosen family are the friends and family that we know we can be ourselves with, the people who love us for who we are, where we can belong just as we are, and to just constantly be conscious, cultivating those relationships, reaching out by phone, by text, on social media, in person, make sure we are checking in with those folks. The older we get, at least in my life, the less good of a friend I've been. I've been focused on family, raising a family and on my professional life. And I haven't been great at keeping those relationships alive. And I'm really returning to that now. And I'm grateful to the friends that haven't just dropped me completely. And those relationships, like I said, I was a plant and I'm continually growing. Relationships either grow or wither as well. So we have to do the work to stay connected.
So wonderful. I really love that. And I could see how that practice could be equally powerful and important to do with our children.
Absolutely.
That reciprocal, how we see one another and how we value one another. And I know in your TED Talk, you said the two most important things that the kids really need are to do chores and to be loved.
It boils down to the work ethic you get from doing chores and being unconditionally loved in the home. Mm-hmm. That's what enables our kids to get out there in the world and knowing how to work hard and knowing how to give and receive love. And that's about what it takes to make your world go round. I didn't respond to your menopause comment, and I meant to, which is to say, I don't know if I'm in it yet. I'm in that place of like, well, am I going to get another period or is it done? I guess they say it has to be a full year of no period, right?
Yes.
The younger listeners might not want to hear this, but I'm going to say this. I'm raising it as you did, because this is something we don't talk about. This is a natural part of life all women go through, and we act as if it doesn't happen. Or we have a few buzzwords like hot flash, And the truth is, it's a huge change. And I have noticed a cloudiness in my thinking that has frightened me. It has made me think I'm having a stroke. It has made me think something's wrong with me. And the more reading I do about menopause, I realize, oh no, this is actually a symptom of menopause. Like, just understand it's normal. It's okay. You're not dying. You're in menopause. I mean, it sounds silly, but when you're worried, you notice your brain changing. It's terrifying. And then, my sex drive has totally changed. I used to have this really strong libido, so strong and just always in life. And it's really changed. And I'm really rooting for it to come back again. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that being intimate with my partner is a really important connector for us. And that even if my body isn't like charged and surging the way it might have been, even 5 years ago, I need to pay attention to it. The minute I have an inkling like, oh, hey, I need to act on that, because intimacy matters in relationships.
I've been thinking for a long time that I need to do an episode on the subject of menopause. And
you should.
I'm thinking about season 4, which will start in 2019. I will now make the commitment to you that this is a conversation that needs to happen. So thank you.
I love it.
For leaning into this more with me right now. We're almost at the end of our time. And before we end with acknowledgements, which is a chance for each of us to share whatever we're taking away personally from the conversation, this is a moment for you to give me and anybody else who's listening that wants to say yes, a challenge of some sort, or to offer us a resource. And this is something that I really do take seriously and has been part of why my life has been so enriched since I started the podcast. Getting these incredible nudges and challenges from the guides that I bring on. So what would you challenge me to do?
Well, I know you're already doing this work, Julie, but I think I'm going to say it anyway for the sake of listeners and just for the sake of me constantly talking about this, which is part of my work right now. My second book, Real American, as you know, is a memoir about race, what it's been like to be Black and biracial and experience, kind of the small cuts and microaggressions of racism. And my own journey has been one of discovering that as a Black woman, I too had allowed the awful stereotypes about Black people infect me. They inhabited my soul. They had made me feel lesser about myself and made me behave in ways supposed to please white folks instead of receive their scorn or disdain or what have you. And so that was me in a self-loathing space who finally learned to love her Black self. And by extension, I was able then to love all Black people. And so my offering or my nudge or my challenge is, if you're not loving Black people, ask yourself why. Be interested in that. We are as human, as worthy of love, as worthy of compassion, as worthy of care as anybody else is. And if you have a stereotype that's coming up when you see a Black face on TV or in the news or walking down the street or at your front door, if your stereotype is kicking in, see if you can't immediately say to yourself, what would I do if this was a white person? How would I be feeling? Or what would I do if this was a person of any race other than Black? We have a hatred for Blackness in this country that has been around since this country became a country and before. And it's on us now to acknowledge that and undo it. And it happens one heart at a time. So join me. I have become this person much more able to love and accept my own self and other Black people. And I invite you to try to do the same. When a stereotype pops up, name it in your own heart and mind and tell yourself, I'm discarding it. I noticed it and now I'm letting it go. And just try to interact with that person as if they are your brother, your mother, your son, your daughter, your friend, and see what happens. I think we need that so desperately in this country. And thank you for giving me the chance to articulate that as an invitation.
Thank you so much. And I will accept that. And you're right in that I have been doing that work. And I realized we didn't talk as much about this as I think you and I were anticipating we would. But I want to just name that I have recorded a series of podcast episodes through an initiative I started called Women Podcasters in Solidarity. And I will link to those because there's a lot I share in those conversations about my own journey and ways of which we can start to uncover this. And there are also a lot of resources in the show notes for those episodes. So I will invite people to listen to those conversations, to get your book, which is so powerful and heartbreaking and illuminating.
Thank you.
I think, as we read through the book, then following through your challenge of really noticing, exactly as you said, all of those moments where, we have all of this bias that we're not even aware of, just starting to turn up our own awareness for all of that. So I commit to that. And I'd love to continue that conversation in my private Mother's Quest Facebook group. And if you and I have the chance to connect again, we can continue that conversation. I can share what's come up. And the last thing is I commit to continuing to have this conversation with my children in ways that are developmentally appropriate. And so for my oldest, he's really ready to be naming and identifying the times when he is letting his mind run with stereotypes so that we can share that with one another and be in conversation about it. Thank you.
Cool. Love it.
So we're going to end, and I just want to reflect back a few of the things I feel like I've been taking away from the conversation, and then I'd love to hear what you're leaving with. I'm really struck by your continued evolution in terms of your own self-awareness, your own commitment to your personal growth, and to the many different manifestations that your gifts and your purpose continue to show up for in your life. I'm really loving that invitation. But I see the parallel both with our kids to really let them be their own human beings and evolve on their path. And as part of that, remembering that we're still our own individual people and we need to be growing, evolving, investing in ourselves, investing in our relationships and in our own sexuality, which is not something that we've talked about yet on the podcast. So thank you so much for bringing all of that to light and reminding me of how all of these different parts of our life connect.
Thank you, Julie. I want you to know that this is probably the best podcast interview I've honored to be a part of. I've done so many. As I said to you at the top of the show before we were recording, I've just done so many, and you have an intentionality about your process. You have a very interesting set of questions, and I really feel delighted that I got to spend this time with you because it actually feels like it now falls into the self-care bucket. Just to be in dialogue with you about these things has been really nourishing for me this morning. So thank you for the opportunity, and kudos to you for really having a marvelous thing here with this podcast.
Thank you. Well, I hope that you will now become a listener and that some of these conversations can continue to fill your
Absolutely.
Your bucket.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Julie. I feel like this is just the beginning of a lot more to come.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about the Mother's Quest community, head over to mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review, and help us spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day. Love your people. Honor your gifts. Until next time.